Is this also as simple as they were desperate?
He better strike gold with Bo Nix.
Into a narrative that never truly fit him.
Draft night was supposed to be predictable. Analysts had their boards ready. Fans thought they knew exactly who deserved to go where. Then the Broncos made their move and the internet exploded. Bo Nix, reach, desperation pick, future bust. That was the instant reaction. Social media lit up. Commentators laughed. Even former players questioned the decision. To most people watching, it looked like Denver panicked and grabbed the safe quarterback nobody actually believed in. But here's the part nobody wants to admit. Inside NFL buildings, the conversation sounded completely different. While the public focused on highlight throws and flashy arm talent, teams were quietly studying something far more dangerous: consistency, processing speed, mental toughness, the stuff that doesn't trend on Twitter but wins games in December. For years, Bo Nix lived inside a narrative that never fully fit him. He wasn't exciting enough. He was raw enough. He didn't look like the prototype superstar fans are conditioned to hype. So every mistake was magnified, every win was minimized, and every step forward was brushed off as system help. Meanwhile, other quarterbacks were handed excuses for bad reads, broken mechanics, and chaotic performances. What most people missed is that Bo Nix didn't crumble under that pressure. He evolved. He survived unstable programs. He learned multiple offensive systems. He absorbed criticism, adjusted his game, and kept stacking experience while the noise kept getting louder. That kind of development doesn't show up on draft highlight reels, but it shows up when defenses start making mistakes and quarterbacks stop giving the ball away. And that's why this story isn't about whether Denver reached. It's about whether the league just watched another slow-burning quarterback take the first step towards something much bigger. Because while fans were laughing on draft night, some coaches were already worried. And the real reason why starts long before the NFL ever called his name. Bo Nix's reputation didn't fall out of thin air. It was built during chaos. When he first stepped into college football, he wasn't handed a stable system or a perfect roster. He was thrown into constant change. New coaches, new playbooks, different offensive identities almost every season. Most young quarterbacks crack under that kind of instability. They rush throws, they lose confidence, they start playing scared. Nix did the opposite. He adapted. At Auburn, he was forced into survival mode. Broken protections, inconsistent receiver play, and constant pressure meant he had to create on the fly. That's where the hero ball label came from. But what critics ignored was why it happened. He wasn't freelancing for attention. He was trying to keep the offense alive. Still, every risky throw became proof he was reckless, while the context got buried. Then came the pivot that changed everything. Oregon, new environment, real structure, clear quarterback responsibilities. Suddenly, the game slowed down. His footwork tightened. His reads became cleaner. His completion percentage jumped. The forced throws disappeared. And instead of chasing highlights, he started dismantling defenses with timing and rhythm. That transformation didn't just improve his stats, it rewired how he played the position. Insiders say this is when front offices really started paying attention, not to his arm strength, not to viral clips, but to how fast he processed information, how quickly he adjusted protections, how calm he stayed when the pocket collapsed. Those details don't trend on social media, but they quietly reshape draft boards. And here's the part that made some coaches uncomfortable. Bo Nix wasn't just improving, he was mastering structure. He learned when to take easy yards, when to avoid disaster, when to let the system work instead of forcing himself into the spotlight. That's not flashy, but it's exactly what keeps quarterbacks in the league. But even with all that growth, the criticism didn't stop. People still said it was too easy at Oregon, too clean, too manufactured. What they didn't realize was that this phase was just the setup. Because when draft night arrived, the league wasn't betting on highlights. They were betting on what happens when pressure gets real. Draft night exposed the gap between public perception and what NFL decision makers actually value. When Bo Nix's name came off the board earlier than most people expected, social media exploded. Analysts called it a reach. Fans labeled it desperate. Critics said teams were gambling on a system quarterback who would fold the moment the game sped up. But inside war rooms, the reaction was very different. Quiet approval, nods of confidence, because what teams saw wasn't hype. It was projection. Coaches weren't drafting him for what he had already done. They were drafting him for how he processes chaos. Film study revealed something most casual viewers missed. Nix reads coverage rotations early. He identifies leverage before the snap. He doesn't freeze when his first option disappears. Instead, he resets his feet and finds the next window. That ability doesn't show up in box scores. It shows up when defenses start disguising pressure and trying to bait mistakes. Defensive coordinators reportedly noticed how he manipulates safeties with his eyes and shoulders. Not dramatically, subtly, just enough to create separation for receivers. That's veteran-level behavior from a young quarterback. And it's why some teams quietly graded his mental processing higher than flashier prospects. They weren't afraid of his arm strength. They were afraid of how quickly he learns. Another underrated factor was his versatility. Nix has already operated in drastically different offensive systems. Spread tempo, RPO-heavy looks, pro-style concepts, power-based schemes. That matters more than people realize. It means defenses can't rely on confusing him with exotic looks forever. He's already seen them, failed against them, adjusted to them. That learning curve happened before he ever took an NFL snap. And then there's the emotional side. Teammates describe him as steady, no sulking after mistakes, no visible panic after bad drives. He resets and moves on. That kind of composure builds trust fast inside locker rooms. Coaches value quarterbacks who stabilize chaos, not amplify it. But here, where the conversation really shifts, because Bo Nix isn't peaking yet. According to people tracking quarterback development, his best football is still ahead. And that's when things get uncomfortable for the doubters. Because quarterbacks built like this don't fade quietly. They grow. And when they grow, the league starts paying attention. What makes Bo Nix truly dangerous isn't raw athleticism. It's how his game is built to age well. His foundation isn't speed, highlight throws, or improvisation. It's timing, anticipation, discipline. Those traits don't disappear when defenses adjust. They get stronger. And that's why some analysts believe his real breakout hasn't even started yet. As chemistry develops with NFL receivers, his accuracy is expected to climb even higher. Not because his arm suddenly gets stronger, but because his anticipation keeps improving. He throws receivers open. He releases the ball before windows fully appear. That's the difference between surviving in the league and controlling it. Coaches love quarterbacks who trust the system enough to stay on schedule instead of forcing chaos. There's also the coaching alignment factor. Being paired with a system that values structure, play action, and quarterback autonomy plays directly into his strengths. Nix doesn't need to be reinvented. He needs refinement. And refinement is where careers are made, quietly, consistently, without headlines. Pressure situations reveal everything. Late downs, 2-minute drills, red zone possessions. This is where many young quarterbacks collapse. Nix doesn't speed up. His mechanics stay tight. His decision-making stays controlled. That calm under stress isn't teachable. It's earned through repetition and failure. And he's already paid those dues. Defensive coordinators are starting to notice something else. He doesn't scramble just to escape. He moves to throw. He keeps his eyes downfield and forces defenders to choose between containing him or covering receivers. That hesitation creates breakdowns in coverage that don't show up in highlight reels but win games in the fourth quarter. And then there's the psychological element. Long drives wear defenses down. Short completions frustrate coverage units. Eventually, opponents cheat. They overcommit. That's when Nix strikes with perfectly timed shots instead of reckless bombs. It's controlled aggression, and it's brutal to defend against. But here's the part that changes everything. As playoff reps accumulate, quarterbacks like Nick's don't shrink. They sharpen. Windows get tighter, pressure gets heavier. And while others regress, he leans into structure. That trajectory doesn't lead to viral moments. It leads to January football. And that's where this story stops being about potential and starts becoming about inevitability. The league has seen this blueprint before. Quarterbacks who were doubted early, labeled safe, overlooked by hype culture, then slowly transformed into postseason monsters once systems stabilized around them. Bo Nix fits that pattern almost too perfectly. His career hasn't been about sudden explosions. It's been about steady elevation. Every season, every adjustment, every rep adding another layer to his game. Early criticism forced accountability. Scheme changes forced adaptability. Public doubt forced focus. Instead of breaking him, those pressures sharpened his edge. By the time opportunity arrived at the NFL level, he wasn't walking in raw. He was battle-tested. That matters more than fans realize. Most young quarterbacks enter the league still learning how to fail. Nick's already learned that lesson in college. Defenders are starting to notice, too. Linebackers and safeties reportedly describe him as annoying to prepare for, not because he's flashy, because he rarely gives clean reads. He manipulates spacing with subtle movements. He shifts safeties with his eyes. He forces hesitation that turns into separation. Those half seconds don't trend on social media, but they destroy defensive structure snap after snap. Pass rushers face a similar problem. Nix doesn't drift aimlessly in the pocket. He slides with purpose. He resets his platform quickly. He releases the ball before pressure fully arrives. That neutralizes elite edge rushers and makes blitz packages risky. When defenses pull back on pressure, he dissects coverage. When they attack, he punishes gaps. Either way, the chessboard tilts in his favor. What separates him even further is emotional control. Trash talk doesn't rattle him. Hits don't rush his mechanics. Bad drives don't linger in his head. That mental insulation frustrates opponents who rely on intimidation to break rhythm. When defenders realize there's no emotional leverage to exploit, momentum shifts. Quietly, permanently. By the fourth quarter, defenses aren't just tired. They're mentally exhausted. Every snap requires discipline. Every mistake costs points. That cumulative stress is how quarterbacks dominate without fireworks. And Nix plays that long game better than most. Which leads to the uncomfortable reality critics don't want to face. This isn't a fluke rise. It's a long-term takeover building in slow motion. And here's the part that really makes defensive coordinators uneasy. Bo Nix hasn't even hit his ceiling yet. According to people who track quarterback development curves, his best football is still ahead of him. Why? Because his game isn't built on speed, raw athleticism, or highlight throws that fade with age. It's built on fundamentals, timing, anticipation, processing. Those skills age like fine wine in the NFL. Quarterbacks who rely on physical traits eventually slow down. Quarterbacks who rely on decision-making and rhythm get better. Nix already throws receivers open. He anticipates breaks before they happen. He trusts windows that most young quarterbacks are too scared to touch. And as chemistry with NFL receivers improves, that timing only sharpens. That's when an offense stops being good and starts becoming dangerous. There's also the system factor. Being paired with a coaching staff that values structure, play action, and quarterback autonomy plays directly into his strengths. Nix doesn't need to be rebuilt. He needs refinement. And refinement is where careers are made, quietly, consistently, ruthlessly. What stands out most is how little panic exists in his game. Late downs don't speed him up. Tight windows don't force reckless throws. Pressure situations don't spike his mechanics. That calm isn't coached. It's earned through repetition and failure. And Nix already paid that price early in his career. Now he's cashing in on it. NFL front offices love this profile. They don't hype it publicly. They let it grow. Less noise, less pressure, more space to develop. And behind closed doors, teams obsess over metrics fans rarely talk about. Third down efficiency, red zone decisions, turnover avoidance, clock management. Those numbers don't make viral clips, but they decide playoff runs. And that's why defenders hate quarterbacks like Bo Nix. He doesn't give gifts. He doesn't chase drama. He just keeps the chains moving and forces mistakes out of tired defenses. Over time, that wears teams down mentally, which sets up the most dangerous phase of all, when quiet efficiency turns into postseason control. Here, where everything starts to come together, playoff football is different. Windows get tighter, defenses get smarter, mistakes get punished instantly. And this is exactly where Bo Nix's style becomes dangerous. He doesn't rely on backyard chaos or broken play miracles. He thrives when structure matters most. According to reports, the internal blueprint around Nix is focused on sustainability, not flash, ball security, tempo control, third and medium efficiency. These are the traits that separate regular season quarterbacks from postseason winners. When defenses blitz late in games, Nix doesn't panic. He identifies leverage pre-snap, adjusts protections, and takes what's available. That discipline forces opponents into long, exhausting drives that slowly break their will. Film breakdowns show something else that doesn't get talked about enough. Nix attacks defensive rules, not individual defenders. He understands coverage tendencies and exploits spacing instead of forcing risky throws. That's a veteran trait showing up early. When safeties creep forward, he takes the deep shot. When linebackers drop, he hammers the underneath routes. Every decision compounds pressure on the defense. Another overlooked weapon is his command of situational football. 2-minute drills, 4-minute offense, red zone execution. These moments decide playoff games. Coaches trust quarterbacks who don't melt under that spotlight. And Nix has already shown he can manage clocks, adjust protections, and execute audibles without freezing up. That trust changes how aggressive play callers can be. Defensive coordinators reportedly hate preparing for him because his efficiency forces patience battles. Long drives tire pass rushers. Short completions frustrate coverage units. Eventually, defenses cheat. That's when Nix strikes with perfectly timed shots that flip momentum without drama. And that's the scary part. He doesn't beat you loudly, he beats you methodically. By the fourth quarter, teams aren't just tired, they're mentally drained. Every snap feels heavier than the last. And once that pattern starts showing up in postseason games, the league won't be able to ignore it anymore. There's a pattern that keeps showing up when defenders talk about facing Bo Nix. It's not trash talk. It's not fear. It's frustration. Linebackers and safeties have reportedly described him as annoying to prepare for, and not in a disrespectful way, in a dangerous way, because he rarely gives them clean reads. Nix manipulates spacing with subtle movements, a slight shoulder turn, a quick eye shift, a delayed release. Those tiny details force defenders to hesitate for half a second. And in the NFL, half a second is the difference between a breakup and a first down. That hesitation stacks over the course of a game. By the third quarter, coverage units start second-guessing themselves. That's when structure collapses. Pass rushers run into a similar problem. Nix doesn't drift backward or panic in the pocket. He slides laterally with purpose, resets his base, and gets the ball out before pressure fully arrives. Elite edge rushers depend on timing. When quarterbacks disrupt that rhythm, blitz packages lose their teeth. According to reports, defensive coaches have already adjusted by rushing fewer players, but that only gives Nix more time to dissect coverage. It becomes a pick-your-poison situation. Another trait that separates him is emotional control. Hits don't speed him up. Trash talk doesn't rattle him. Missed throws don't linger in his body language. Teammates have reportedly noticed how quickly he resets after mistakes. That emotional stability keeps offenses from spiraling when momentum swings. Defenders also respect his willingness to take contact to complete throws. Nix doesn't shy away from pressure if it means moving the chains. That toughness builds credibility fast. Once defenders hesitate even slightly, the offense gains leverage. By the fourth quarter, Opponents aren't just physically tired, they're mentally exhausted. Every snap requires discipline. Every mistake feels fatal. That cumulative pressure is how quarterbacks win games without highlight reel chaos. And that's what makes this version of Bo Nix dangerous. He doesn't rely on spectacle. He relies on control. And control is what wins in this league. Here's the part nobody wants to admit out loud. Bo Nix doesn't need hype. He doesn't need viral moments. He doesn't need flashy headlines to take over. His rise is happening the dangerous way, quietly, methodically, and right under the radar. And history shows that quarterbacks built like this don't flame out. They age into dominance. While critics argue about draft position and early stats, front offices are watching something else entirely. Decision speed, turnover avoidance, situational control, 2-minute execution, red zone efficiency. These are the traits that don't trend on social media but decide playoff games. And this is where Nix keeps separating himself. He isn't chasing highlight throws. He's stacking sustainable wins. The scary part is that he hasn't even reached his ceiling yet. Reports suggest his best football is still ahead because his game isn't built on raw athleticism that fades. It's built on fundamentals, preparation, and adaptability. That combination compounds over time. As chemistry grows with receivers and comfort expands in the system, the margin for error shrinks for defenses. That's when quarterbacks stop being promising and start becoming problems. And make no mistake, playoff football is where this profile becomes lethal. When defenses tighten up, when mistakes end seasons, when structure matters more than chaos. Nix thrives in controlled environments. He protects possessions. He manages tempo. He punishes impatience. That formula doesn't create flashy box scores, it creates January wins. What makes this takeover even more unsettling for opponents is how predictable it becomes in hindsight. A quarterback doubted early, labeled safe, overlooked, then trusted, then feared. That path doesn't lead to viral fame, it leads to banners. Bo Nix isn't trying to prove anyone wrong loudly. He's letting time do the work, and time is the most dangerous weapon in football. So while the league debates narratives, one thing is becoming clear. This isn't a hot streak. It's a foundation being built brick by brick. And once it's finished, it won't be quiet anymore.